Okay, so you're going to find Helix under the draw menu in drafting and annotation. It's right here. Okay. When you first do Helix, it's going to ask where to start from, just like it would with a circle. So you're going to select it. And the first thing it's going to ask is a base radius. So on a helix, you can have two different radii. They can be the same, the base and the top, or they can be different. And you would see a difference with, like, say, a battery spring is going to have a larger base than top, but we're going to go with just the same. So say I do a 2 base radius and I do a 2 top radius. It should look like a circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the shift key and my mouse wheel and rotate it. So now I can see what I'm making. And I'm going to make it 4 tall. Okay, so it's pretty small. What you need to realize and remember about all of your objects that you make is that this is, you can modify it relatively easy. You do have pull points that can change your height. And then in your properties panel, you do have ways to change how many turns there are and how many, and what your radius is, and then also the height. So let's make that an even number. And then you can change it from counterclockwise to clockwise, and that'll just make a difference depending on what you're making. But for us, it won't matter. So this is your helix. Now, you can sweep this helix with anything you want. In your project, you're going to sweep it with a circle. I'm just going to do a polygon here, and I'm going to make it relatively small. So 0.125, okay? And if you make it too large, it's going to intersect, and then it's going to give you an issue when you try and sweep. So you're just going to type in sweep for your tool. The first thing it wants to know is the object you're going to sweep. So what are you going to put on the path? Once you press enter, it's going to ask you for the path, and you should select it, and it might take a second. Mine actually completely stalled. There it goes. And mine, because I chose a polygon, shows you multiple lines. When you do it, I'll show you, when you do just a circle with your sweep, it's going to look a little bit different. So if I do a circle and I sweep this path, it's going to, think about it for a moment, and it's going to look like that, okay? You did it right. However, it just needs to be placed into conceptual so you can actually see it, okay? So I'm going to step back and put my hexagon back on that because I just think it looks better. So enter, and my path, enter, and it'll sweep it. Okay. Once you do that, you have to realize that your properties are going to change. Okay, so when I select this now, I really don't have much I can change. It gives me the length. I can't change that. It gives me the scale, but that doesn't, there's not much of an impact there. And I just changed it, and it's upset with me. If you change it to wireframe, you can see it, okay, and see what it does. You see my polygons right here. Depending on the orientation of the shape will depend on how it meets up with your path. So depending on the work plane and how you have your object laid out, your path will shift and change. So don't forget that. The next thing you'll do is you'll create a path to make a paperclip. And really that's just going to be a bunch of lines that you offset, okay? The easiest way would be to start your line to make sure your ortho is on, and then just start offsetting your lines to be the center point of the paperclip. I mean, that's too far, but just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Okay. And then a couple of you have been having some issues with the arc tool, and the arc tool has many ways that you can manipulate it. My preferred method is start, end, and angle. And really all you have to do is select an endpoint, select your end, your other endpoint, and it doesn't even matter if your arc is correct to begin with, because any of these little pull points can be used to manipulate your arc. Okay, if you have perpendicular on, it can give you some trouble, so you might want to turn that off, and you might want to look at it in a perspective, when you're manipulating it, that's going to make sense for your actual object, okay? So you don't want it to be too bulbous, and you don't want it to look incorrect. And the other thing that you need to realize is that once you make your full path, and I'm just going to do it with these three, you want to join them. The reason you want to join them is that your sweep will stop at the end of the line. So if I sweep this with my, whoops, I'm going to do it wrong now. If I use this and I sweep this entity, it'll make it smooth, a smooth transition. If I hadn't joined it, okay, and it was separate components, yep, and I chose to use a circle to sweep it, what would happen is I would have to, let me copy those, okay. Okay, if I was going to do that, one, I have to make multiple copies to sweep this. No one wants to do that. And you aren't going to get as smooth a transition. Especially this makes it a little bit easier to get the transition, but now you have separate entities again, and you're going to have to union those. So don't do that to yourself. Join the 2D entity prior to sweeping, because you don't want to have these disjointed ends for your assignment. Okay.